And Archana ji, I have something to tell you. Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
Archana,
Rangada. Tell me. Yeah.
yesterday you mentioned one of the possibilities, okay? And I said yes, yes. The possibility you mentioned was that two souls can have the same swabhava, but they can have a different swadharma in the physical world, right? You remember?
Yes, yes, Rangada.
Yeah. But now I would make a slight amendation to that, because when
Yes.
the divine is creating, creation necessarily means multiplicity. Why should he make
Yes.
two? Yeah, so the chance, theoretically what you're saying is okay, but the chances of two souls having the same character is not even,
Not possible.
not even wanted, no? Because the divine is creating variety. He wants differences. He wants multiplicity. So that possibility, theoretically, yes, it's possible, but it is not necessary.
It can be similar, not same.
Yeah, that's it. But there's another thing. This Swadharma, okay, can be similar for two people. In other words, let us say fighting for freedom. So many
Yes.
people can contribute to the fighting for freedom. Okay, so their all Swadharma will be the same relatively in different modes and different characters. Okay, in a
And
very,
also,
yeah, tell me.
and also when Swabhava is same, but Swadharma, it is like having two flowers of different species have purple color.
That's right. The differences are always there, small differences. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so who will read? Gita will read. It becomes clear from these considerations.
I'll read the next para.
Okay, okay, you have not yet got it? Okay, then.
I'll read, Rangada.
Yes, read. It becomes clear.
It becomes clear that these considerations, sorry, it becomes clear from these considerations that the coexistence of the infinite and the finite, which is the very nature of universal being, is not a juxtaposition or mutual inclusion of two opposites, but as natural and inevitable as the relation of the principle of light and fire with the suns. The finite is a frontal aspect and a self determination of the infinite. No finite can exist in itself and by itself. It exists by the infinite, and because it is of one essence with the infinite. For by the infinite, we do not mean solely an illimitable self extension in space and time, but something that is also spaceless and timeless, a self existent, indefinable, and illimitable, which can express itself in the infinitesimal as well as in the vast, in a, in a second of time, in a point of space, in a passing circumstance. The finite is looked upon as a division of the indivisible, but there is no such thing. For this division is only apparent. There is a demarcation, but no real separation is possible. When we see with the inner vision and sense, and not with the physical eye, a tree or other object, what we become aware of is an infinite, one reality constituting the tree or object, pervading its every atom and molecule, forming them out of itself, building the whole nature, process of becoming, operation of indwelling energy. All of these are itself, all of these are itself, are these infinite. This reality. We see it extending indivisibly and uniting all objects so that none is really separate from it or quite separate from other objects. It stands, says the Gita, undivided in beings and yet as if divided. Thus, each object is that infinite and one in essential being with all other objects that are also forms and names, powers and numens of the infinite.
Yeah. Very interesting para. And he's explaining to you that how the personal and the impersonal, and now in this para he is discussing the infinite and the finite really being one. It is not that they are together. It is not that they are together. They are really one. That's the whole thing he's explaining. We'll give examples of what, then we can extend our imagination and see what he's saying. I read each para, okay? I don't have, because I am on the book now, I don't have the summaries, but it doesn't matter. We'll discuss each para, each sentence. it becomes clear from these considerations that the coexistence of the infinite and the finite, which is the very nature of the universal being, is not a juxtaposition or mutual inclusion of two opposites, but as natural and inevitable as the relation of the principle of light and fire in the suns. So he's giving an example himself. We'll give other examples also. So light and fire is always present in the sun, but light and fire are infinite and the sun is finite, relatively finite. Okay, however big it is finite. So this idea that everything can become finite and also can become infinite. We are very, very finite in our bodies, okay? But if our body dies, what happens? It goes back to its infinite form, it merges into matter, which is universal. So exactly in the same way, I'll give you another instance also, then it becomes very clear. The salt in the sea is infinite. It is everywhere, okay? It is everywhere, it is finite. But can that salt take on a finite form? Absolutely. It can become a grain of salt. So they are together, they can always be together. And from one you can go to the other, and from the other you can go to the one. If I drop a grain of salt into the water, it becomes infinite. It disappears, its fine form disappears. But can I come from the infinite to the form? Yes. If I evaporate the seawater, I get grains of salt. Okay. So it's possible from.
And
Yes.
Rangada,
Yes.
can we also say that ultimately, since everything is made of these 5 elements,
Yes.
and the whole universe is also made up of these 5 elements.
Yes. That's right.
So, so when it is about where we station our consciousness,
That's right.
and therefore this that infinity is inherent. It's
That's,
only where one's awareness is stationed.
yes. And you don't see that. I'll give you an example. It will be very interesting to see that. Okay. And so why is it that we don't see the infinity when we are in our normal consciousness? That is what we will discuss. It's a very interesting thing. But we'll first of all finish what he's saying here and then we go on. Okay. So one example he has given, light and fire are infinite. But the sun, which is originating this, the sun becomes a representative finite form of light and fire. Okay. I gave you the idea of the salt and the sea also is the same. Okay. The finite is a frontal aspect and a self-determination of the infinite. The finite is a frontal aspect. It can become a form. Okay. And that's exactly why in a spiritual experience, a human being, consciousness is individualized in the body-mind life, the soul is individualized, and yet it has the power to go back to its infinite form. Precisely, the grain of salt can disappear and become infinite. Then you have the cosmic consciousness. Okay, so that's the logic. The finite is a frontal aspect and a self-determination of the infinite. Understand the word self-determination. When you determine something, you are giving characteristics. Okay, something which is indeterminate, you cannot give characteristics. Okay, but when something is very determinate, okay, determinate means with fixed features, then it takes on a form. But this is formed not by somebody else, but by itself. It is itself giving features to itself. That's why self-determination. The infinite determines itself into finite forms. Okay. So the word self-determination, you have to understand in that way. No finite can exist in itself and by itself. Okay. It is coming from the infinite. So if the infinite were not there, no finite form would exist. Another way of putting it is, the world would not exist if God was not there. Okay. But if God is not there, the world will not exist. But if the world does not exist, God can always exist because he can make another world. He is the one who is making the worlds. It exists by the infinite, and because it is of one essence with the infinite, The essence in the case that we gave is the light and heat for the sun, and it's the saltiness of the grain of salt. Okay, so that's the essence. That doesn't change. It is there in both. For by the infinite, we do not mean solely an illimitable self-extension in space and time, but something that is also spaceless and timeless. Okay, it is, both can be there. A self-existent, indefinable. Indefinable is the indeterminability of something. Okay, you cannot give specific specifications and characteristics to it. Illimitable, which can express itself in the infinitesimal as well as in the vast, in a second of time, in a point of space, in a passing circumstance. This is absolutely relevant, and it is reminiscent of William Blake. Okay, and I have got the lines written down, so now I won't make a mistake. William Blake wrote this 400, 500 years ago. Okay? To see a world in a grain of sand. Okay? In a grain of sand, you can see the whole world if you are in the right consciousness. And heaven in a wild flower. The wild flower is the most insignificant thing growing on the roadside or the mountainside, but you can see a heaven in it. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Okay? So that's exactly, the two are always going together. And this applies also to personal and impersonal. Now, the slight interesting, because an idea came into me yesterday, and I will discuss that. Why is it that we don't see the infinity when we are in our normal consciousness? Okay, that's the whole question. So I'll put it this way. There is a fundamental reality. Okay, don't think of men and anything else. There is a fundamental reality. That fundamental reality at the highest level is Satchidananda, or God, if you want simple words. Okay, and God expresses himself and creates the universe. The universe also is a fundamental reality, and in conscience it becomes the whole thing, right from the top of the finite infinite right to the finite in the bottom. There is a reality. Okay, but this reality, if it exists by itself, who is experiencing it? Nobody is experiencing it. Somebody is experiencing this reality. And who is that something? It is consciousness. Okay, consciousness is seeing the reality that is created, and this consciousness can be infinite at the highest level. It can be absolutely finite and even zero at the lower level. So let's put it this way. At the lowest level, even a worm or a caterpillar is experiencing the reality with the instruments of knowledge that it has been given. Okay, it has been given only a sense of touch. So it's experiencing the physical world through touch, no eyes, nothing. Okay, so it is experiencing the world in only one way. It's very limited experience. Now we come to slightly higher forms of life. I jump straight away to a cat or a dog. Okay, it's got 5 senses, but it is experiencing the physical world through these 5 senses. Okay, the senses are the instruments of knowledge. Now, if the instruments are defective, you will see not the reality, but something which is not the reality, because you're not seeing the whole thing. Okay, so our senses are very defective. You can compare our senses to a broken pair of spectacles if you want. So you are seeing division because the spectacles are showing you everything is divided. Okay, but as I go climb in consciousness higher and higher, the instruments of knowledge go on changing. So now when I go to the spiritual planes of consciousness, my spectacles are no more broken because I don't use my gross senses. I don't use my physical sight. I don't use my physical hearing. I am hearing subtle hearing and subtle sight I am hearing. And that is not broken specs. It is full, clear and transparent. I start seeing the reality, and that's a oneness. Okay, so this is why you have to, this is how you have to understand. And these instruments of knowledge go on becoming different as you keep going higher and higher, and they become more and more powerful. Okay, so intuition is one instrument of knowledge. But what about the highest plane of consciousness? What is God experiencing? Does he experience the universe? He himself is the creator. So he is experiencing himself. In other words, identification becomes the instrument of knowledge, if you want to put it that way. But because you yourself are the reality, there is no need of knowledge. You are yourself the knower, the knowledge, and the known. So identity becomes the instrument of knowledge at the highest level. Separation and broken specks are at the lower level. Okay, that's why you don't see the unity. You see only the brokenness. Okay, so that is why, that's what he's saying. So if you climb in consciousness, you will start seeing the infinite. Okay, but when you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, you can see that. Now, I gave the other day, I gave an example, and Shilpa was quite interested in that example of the astronaut. Okay, he is scheduled to go at 12 o'clock to the space station. Okay, to the space station. So he's at home, he's seeing his wife, his house, his car, he's seeing his children, he packs them off to school, he's seeing the multiplicity, he's seeing the one, not the oneness, but the differences. Then time comes, he sits in his car, goes to the the space station, sits in the rocket, and the rocket starts going up. As it keeps going up, does he see his home anymore? First he will see the home in the street, then he will see the whole town, then he will see the whole district, then he will see, as he keeps going higher and higher, he will see his whole country. Finally, he'll see the whole globe. He is seeing the essential oneness. Okay? Because he has gone up. Now is he seeing the multiplicity? No. He is seeing only the whole. He is seeing the whole planet. But he is not seeing the roads, he is not seeing the cars moving on the, he doesn't see that. Okay. So the question arises, is there somewhere a consciousness which can see both the finite and the infinite? The answer is yes, and that's the supermind. When you go to the supermind, you start seeing both. You start seeing the unity as well as the multiplicity. Okay? I've gone a little out of the way because I found it very interesting to explain it in this way. So, this is what Sridhar is saying, that they always go together. But this togetherness of the finite and the infinite is available to man only at the supramental level, not in the lower levels of consciousness. Okay? So now, I go back to the text. Okay.
May I say something?
Go ahead.
You know, if we go to the Pondi seashore,
Yes.
and we are standing on the beach,
Okay.
we will just see the beach and we'll see the horizon.
Okay. Okay.
Now, if you rise up to the third floor of a building,
Okay.
you will get a little more scenery.
Exactly.
Now, supposing tomorrow there is a 20-story building in Pondi.
That's
Then
right.
from that 20th floor,
Yes.
you will not only see Pondi, you will also see Auroville and Matra Mandir.
That's right.
So the higher you go,
Yes.
the greater is your horizon.
Absolutely.
And that is why the people in the past thought that once you go to the horizon, you fall down and you die. Till they realize that you got the knowledge that the world is round, and if you go to the horizon, you don't fall down. So it's something like that.
The first part of what you're saying is fine, okay? But I didn't understand this falling back from the horizon. What is that?
Oh, you know, before it was discovered that the earth is round,
Okay.
people were under the notion that the world ends at the horizon.
Okay, okay. Now I understand what you're saying. But
So it was in ignorance that people lived, and they thought the moment you go to the horizon, the earth is a square.
yeah,
So from the edge of the horizon, now you will fall down.
that's right. There was the flat. The earth
That
was
was,
flat.
yeah, that the earth is flat, it's not round.
But let me mention one thing, okay? This was in the West, okay? The idea that the world is not round and that it is not the center of the universe, it is the center of the universe. That was what was taught because of the Christian ideas, okay? But Galileo Tycho Brahe and the others also disputed that, and they almost came to grief because the church was very much against that. But not so in India. Let me be very, very specific. Okay.
Yes, yes, we knew astronomy and everything
Yes,
thousands of years ago.
that's right.
These
Even
people discovered only hundreds of years ago.
yes, thousands, not hundreds, thousands. And
Yeah.
they had even calculated the distance to the moon and the sun. Okay. The astronomy was highly developed at that time. Okay. Physical science, I'm not even talking of spiritual science, so it's physical science. It was known. Aryabhatta and all these, okay, slowly these things are now coming to light, but we knew all that. The earth is round was,
So,
yeah,
Rangada, so being in supramental consciousness is like fixing a camera in your house, and while in the rocket, you are able to see both the multiplicity and
yeah,
right.
you can say that, yes. But the reality of the Superman is so different from our images that all images help to understand, and yet they are really not the same thing. Okay, so obviously, all the images that we give, some understanding comes out. Okay, so
Or you could say that your eyes become like that camera, that if you choose to focus on the multiplicity, you could.
yes,
And
okay. So I go back to my text. Okay, so. The finite is looked upon as a division of the indivisible. But there is no such thing, precisely because when the reality is made from the highest to the lowest, there is no division. But you are seeing the division because of your defective instruments. Okay, that's what you have to understand. When we see the inner vision and sense, and not with the physical eye, a tree or an object, what we become aware of is an infinite one reality constituting the tree or object, pervading its every atom and molecule, forming them out of itself, building the whole nature, process of becoming, operation of indwelling energy. That's exactly what we discussed just now. You see the saltiness in the ocean, and yet you can also see the grain of sand also. Do you see that? See that? All of these are itself are this infinite, this reality. We see it extending indivisibly and uniting all objects so that none is really separate from it or quite separate from its objects. It stands, says the Gita, undivided in beings and yet as if divided. Okay. This is the 13th chapter of the Gita, verse 16. Okay. Avibhaktam Vibhaktam eva tishtati. Okay, that's what it says. It seems to be divided, and yet it is not divided at all. Okay. Thus, each object is that infinite and one in essential being with all other objects that are also forms and names, powers, noumens of the infinite. So, shall we go to the next para? We have time. 8:20. We have got 20. We have got 15, 17 minutes. So we can read the
I
next.
will read now. I'll
Okay.
read it.
What is the meaning of the word numen?
Okay. Nomen is also sometimes, nomen is name. Okay. You can say forms and names. Nomen is the name of something. Okay. The name of something is the finite aspect. Okay. Now tell me, Yasmin, you asked a question. Your name is Yasmin. If I give you another name, will your essential character change? Absolutely not.
No, Shakespeare has said, no, a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet.
And not a rose is a rose is a rose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So that is what is meant. Okay. Numen, the name, the finite form of something is only a name. Nama Rupa. That's what it means. Okay. Numen.
But Rangada, in Sanskrit, the word itself contains the meaning as well.
Which one?
in Sanskrit, the words are not as English. You know, it is the word itself has the meaning in it. That's the difference between English dictionary and Sanskrit dictionary. The
Okay.
sound itself is the.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. Sanskrit, yeah, the etymology is very, very clear. The word is formed by a root, okay, and that root is suffixes and prefixes, and all these are added. And so, if you understand the root, that's exactly what I'm doing also when I'm reading Sanskrit. I always try to get the root. Once you get the root of a word, it can understand. When it is different forms with adding of suffixes and prefixes. Okay, so that's exactly what you're saying is absolutely true. It springs, the meaning of a word in Sanskrit springs from the root. Okay, absolutely. So now
I'll
we
read the next paragraph.
yeah, please do that. This incoercible.
This incoercible unity in all divisions and diversities is the mathematics of the infinite, indicated in a verse of the Upanishad. I think that Purnamada Purnamidam.
That's right.
So this is complete, and that is the complete. Subtract the complete from the complete is the remainder.
Yeah.
For so too it may be said of the infinite self-multiplication of the reality that all things are that self-multiplication. The one becomes many, but all these many are that which was already and is always itself, and in becoming the many remains the one. There is no division of the one by the appearance of the infinite, for it is the one infinite that appears to us as the many finite. The creation adds nothing to the infinite. It remains after creation what it was before. The infinite is not a sum of things. It is that which is all things and more. If this logic of the infinite contradicts the conceptions of our finite reason, it's because it exceeds it and does not base itself on the data of the limited phenomenon, but embraces the reality and sees the truth of all phenomena in the truth of the reality. It does not see them as separate beings, movements, names, forms, things. For that they cannot be, since they could be that only if they were phenomena in the void. Things without a common basis or essence, fundamentally unconnected, connected only by coexistence and pragmatic relation, not realities which exist by their root of unity, and so far as they can be considered independent, are secured in their independence of outer or inner figure and movement only by their perpetual dependence on their parent infinite, their secret identity with the one identical. The identical is their root, their cause of form, the one power of their varying powers, their constituting substance.
So here he is also explaining the same thing. And this quotation that he has given, he has translated also. This is the from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this is it's wonderful. Purnasya Purnamadaya. Okay, you take the infinite out of the infinite, the remainder is the infinite. This is the logic of the infinite. It doesn't apply at the physical level. So this is the basic truth of what he's saying. The fine and also very interesting word he used, the infinite is always the parent. Okay. And from the parent, the child, the finite is the child of the parent, and that comes out. So the finite cannot exist without the infinite. You can't have a child without a parent. And the parent is the infinite. It's the salt in the ocean that is making the grain of salt possible. Okay, so that's what he's saying. And it is also another way of saying, okay, the ocean, calm and quiet, is the infinite. But the moment it starts making waves, the waves are the forms. And the form is essentially that water itself, that infinite water substance, which starts molding itself into forms. Okay, so that's another way of also seeing. Waves cannot exist without the ocean. The ocean can exist without the waves, but all finite forms can exist only because the ocean of infinity is there. That's what basically is said. Okay, so we have 10 minutes more. So shall we go through each sentence? Maybe we can do that very fast, but the idea is very clear now. So we can go pretty fast. This incoercible unity. What is to coerce? To force something to do something unwillingly by a great force. Okay, to coerce somebody, to put pressure on someone to do something which he doesn't want to do. Okay, but it's not like that. This is incoercible. The incoercible unity of all divisions and diversities is the mathematics of the infinite, indicated in the verse of the Upanishads. This is the complete and that is the complete. By the way, it's interesting. Purnam ida and Purnam ada. Okay, Purnam idam, Purnam ida, Purna. In, the DMK people in Tamil Nadu say Sanskrit has nothing to do with the Tamil language. Total nonsense. Even the word either and other, okay? Other means that, either means this, okay? So it's coming from Sanskrit. Idam, other. So it's very interesting. Purnamada, Purnavidam. Okay, so that's what he said. So, this is the complete and that is the complete. Subtract the complete from the complete is the remainder. This is not possible in normal mathematics, but it is possible at the infinite level. For so too it may be said of the infinite self-multiplication of the reality, that all things are that self-multiplication. The one becomes the many, but all these many are that which was already and is always itself, and in becoming the many remains the one. That's the thing. Even in the physical world, if you extend your imagination, you will see that that's absolutely true. Okay, a mango tree is the essence of all the mango trees, but each mango tree is different. So, but the essential character remains the same. Okay, that's what he's saying. There is no division of the one by the appearance of the finite. For it is the one infinite that appears to us as the many finite. Note the word appears. Why? Because we are using wrong instruments of sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. For it is the one infinite that appears to us as the many finite. The creation adds nothing to the infinite. When the infinite is producing finite forms, creation, okay, manifestation, nothing is being added, but you are seeing it in a different way. It remains after creation what it was before. Okay. The infinite is not a sum of things. It is that which is all things and more. If this logic of the infinite contradicts the conceptions of our finite reason, it is because it exceeds it and does not base itself on the data of the limited phenomenon, but embraces the reality and sees the truth of all phenomena in the truth of the reality. That is the reason why in Sanskrit you use the word Trigunatita. When you are in the normal, identified with your body, mind, life, you are subject to Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. By the way, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas only belong to the lower plane of consciousness, the lower hemisphere. There is no Sattva, Rajas, Tamas in the higher planes of consciousness. They are characteristics of the lower. Okay? So when you go to the higher, you are shedding your imperfect instrumentations and you become Trigunatita, Atita. You are going beyond the three gunas. So you are not subject anymore to the limitations of your senses. Okay? So it does not see them as separate beings, movements, names, forms, things. For they cannot be, since they could be that only if they were phenomena in the void, things without a common base or essence. This is what it means is that everything is made from the substance of Sat. That is there, and that Sat is taking different shapes and forms. It's like the vast earth, okay? The vast clay can be made into forms. You can have plates and jugs and cups and whatnot, all vessels, and you can easily break the vessel and it goes back into the clay. So that is what is happening all the time. All our bodies are coming from infinite matter and go back to infinite matter. This coming from the infinite and going back, the finite going back into the infinite is happening at all the levels. At the physical level, our body is the finite form, it goes back into matter to be reprocessed for other bodies. Same thing with the vital, same thing with the mind, same thing with the soul also. But there's one small difference with the soul. It can merge into the infinite divine soul, but it need not. Okay, that's the only difference. It need not. It can remain in the higher levels of consciousness. It has got three choices. A soul, when it is realized what it is itself, it has three choices, maybe more. The first choice is it can disappear out of existence into where it came from. It can merge into the solar light and disappear from manifestation. Number one. Number two, it can continue to exist on the spiritual planes of consciousness. That is the reason why in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, when you are reading, all these siddhas, okay, and rishis, they are all there, okay. They are permanently stationed in these higher planes of consciousness. The Ribhus and the attendants of Shiva, the attendants of Kubera, they are all realities, but they don't change. They are typal beings which live forever. They are immortal. But as individual soul has got three choices. Either it disappears or it remains in the physical planes of, the spiritual planes of consciousness, or it can take birth again and come back. Sri Aurobindo opts for the third level, third option. Come back with a divine consciousness and help the evolution. Okay, so by that route. So now it's a law, big sentence. Okay. I am reading from somewhere in the middle. It does not see them as separate beings, movements, names, forms, things. For that they cannot be, since they could not be that only if they were phenomena in the void, things without a common basis or essence, fundamentally unconnected. They can't be fundamentally unconnected, everything is connected. Connected only by coexistence and pragmatic relation, not realities which exist by their root of infinity, and so far as they can be considered independent, are secured in their independence of outer or inner figure and movement only by their perpetual dependence on the parent infinite. You see them as independent objects, but they are actually dependent on the infinite. Their secret identity with the one identical. Sri Aurobindo often uses the word identical, means one, the supreme one. The identical is their root, their cause of form, the one power of their varying powers, their constituting substance. So, we did two paras, and he's explaining to you that the finite and the infinite are always together. But we, when we are in the lower planes of consciousness, we see only the division, we see the finite. When we go to higher levels of consciousness, we start seeing the oneness of things, we start seeing the infinity, we start understanding things. And if you go to the highest level, everything becomes clear, that the finite and the infinite are all really one. So we stop here today. So, tomorrow is the synthesis, right? Yeah, Friday, yeah. So we'll do that. But
Thank you, Rangada.
okay.
Have a nice day and take care of your throat still.
Yeah, little bit is lingering, but I'm you know. Okay.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.